Welcome to Stories and Innovations in ALS, Detoxification and Biochemical Resilience. My name is Lisa Deegan, and I'm joined today with McFinn and Lisa. We're storytellers. We've both been affected by ALS. Our mission is to share the stories of others affected and the efforts of those helping to find a cure for this devastating disease. Everything ALS is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to bring citizen-driven research to help accelerate treatments for ALS. Today, we're honored to have the opportunity to talk with Dr. Christopher Shade, who is the CEO and founder of Quicksilver Scientific. Quicksilver Scientific creates supplements and detoxification protocols, including the absorption of essential vitamins and elimination of toxins to help people achieve their genetic potential. Dr. Shade, thanks for being here today. We really appreciate this opportunity to talk with you and are honored you're taking the time to share your work in detoxification with us, which is so important in ALS. So let's get to your story.
Thanks for having me, McFinn, and thank you, Lisa.
Okay, I've been looking at some of your other videos, and you're a very varied person. I'm really interested in hearing your comments today. And so I want to go back a little bit, because to really know who you are, I got to hear a little bit of history.
You want some history
I want some history on you, sir.
Well, I'll just give you the raw, uncensored history. So, I grew up, I was kind of, a math and science type of guy. And, really, it's a really varied story, because then sort of before we knew about traumatic brain injuries and, we knew very little about ALS. We knew very little about concussions, and I got a pretty bad one in high school. And then that sort of catches up with you a few years later. When I went for my undergrad, the damage was to my left brain. You're analytical, and I just wasn't as sharp as I used to be. But I got into very alternative things, and I, before cannabis was big, I was growing that. I was trying hallucinogens, and then that sort of opened me up on the other side. And I left, I stopped being a scientist. I traveled a lot. And then I came back, I finished up my degree, and I became an organic farmer. So I really got into a lot of mystical and philosophical stuff. I was very into Western Hermetic stuff and Taoism and Hinduism and Buddhism. And then I, became this organic farmer. So I was looking at soil systems, but I was thinking very philosophically. So you get to use your right brain, your abstract side, along with your left brain. And so I sort of learned how to jive the two of them. And then I joked that I went out of business as an organic farmer the year that Whole Foods came around. There was no money in that. But I learned this way of systems thinking. And, we're all into the microbiome now, but that was how you did organic farming back then. It was before USDA. You had to get certified. You had to prove that you were building a soil ecosystem. So I went back to grad school, and I did some work around pollution, environmental pollution with agriculture. And then I went to get a PhD, and I shifted from that into looking at heavy metals. And I was looking specifically at mercury cycling through the environment, and built and patented some testing for separating different forms of mercury in the body. And then started my company. I took the patent, I moved out here to Boulder County and started a company based on that. First doing environmental testing, and then moving into clinical testing. And at first I was just going to measure stuff in people. And to do that, at the time, people were using chelators and doing what they call challenge testing. So take some chelators, see how much metal pees out. And I was doing that, and I was doing the testing, separating different forms. And I ended up getting my dental amalgams out, and I was taking more chelator, and it was making me sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. And I realized that the way that we were doing detoxification had a lot of flaws in it. And I shifted over, I say in the dark night of my biochemical soul, when I was at my lowest, I was going to functional medicine meetings, and suddenly had this insight from everything I was seeing to move everything, instead of through the kidneys, move it through the liver and GI. And I started working on products that trap mercury that's coming out of the liver into the GI and stop it from reabsorbing. So pull everything down to the GI. And that got me out of all the problems that I got into with the chelators. And then I started, well, why did that even work? What are the mechanisms at place? And started unraveling how detoxification works. What are the things that we need to put into the body? So I had this anchor down in the GI, and then I had to put stuff in to push from the cells and get everything down there, including things to make the liver work right. So we just built from there, and it was getting into liposomes and nanoemulsions that enabled us to get all these compounds into the body to make this happen. So that's where it all began. And then we started building out our lines and looking at different natural substances that need better delivery, and how do we tie together metabolism and detox and brain health and detox. And that's led us to where we are today.
Wow, what a history. That is so interesting, because my lead level was 49. And
Your lead level?
My lead level, 49.
Wow.
I detoxed with DMSA
Yeah.
for up to 18 months. And I
Yeah.
brought my lead level down to 16. Then I waited 5 years for another test, and it
Yep.
came in at 15. My naturopath wanted me to come back and get it down to 5. And I said,
Yeah.
no, I mean, that's a huge responsibility, chelation therapy. And I'm feeling fine. You know, I was paralyzed.
Yeah.
I could only move 2 fingers on my head.
Wow.
Yeah, I had ALS. I'm
Wow.
Dr. Bedlack's number 42 reversal.
Wow.
So lead affected me. I failed every grade in school, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And so it wasn't until I went to my naturopath, until I got ALS, I went to a naturopath.
Yeah.
The rest of the doctors, nobody considered chelation. It was only the naturopath. And so
Yep.
18 months later, as I say, I got down to 16. I live in a mining district. I have gold mines
Okay.
all around me here in Northern
Yeah, I
California.
was going to ask, how do you get that level? Yep.
Okay, the reason I got that level was I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and I got it
Okay.
as a child from the age of 1 to 4. I was drenched in lead. And right then, from kindergarten on, I failed every grade.
Wow.
Couldn't read or write so anyway, just to say, when you
early lead exposure, and there was a lot of lead smelters. Often the dust has a lot of lead. There's the lead paint. There was a lot going on then. St. Louis was bad. Areas of Chicago were really bad.
Thank you. They never knew what was wrong with me. They just told me I was lazy. And
yeah.
So your history is helping me right now, because I could never understand why I was having all those physical problems. And once I understood, I was polluted. It was my environment.
Yeah, my resilience jumped up so much once I got all the metal out of my mouth and did all the detox. You know, I would go to conferences and stuff, and I'd come back and I'd always get sick afterward. My kids got sick, I'd get sick. You know, if I worked too much, I'd just sort of crash. And after that, I had so much more resilience. Like I never got sick anymore, and I could work much more and travel a lot and just be able to handle it all.
Chris, your journey is pretty fascinating, and I feel like we need 10 other podcasts just to follow up on all the different things that you've done. And I feel like you are such a wealth of information and knowledge that we just need to pick your brain, but we don't have enough time in this podcast. But
yeah,
I want to hear about Quicksilver Scientific, and how specifically, if you could explain to us how you're combining nature's nutrients with science that create these effective supplements for detoxification purposes. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, let's just talk about how the body wants to detox, and then how do we harness that? And that's a combination of what substances are we going to use, and what is the delivery technology, meaning how do we get these things into the blood? So how does the body detoxify? So if you're off in an organ, you're in a cell and the cell's in the organ and it's got some mercury in it. You got to get that out. So first you got to link it onto something that you make called glutathione. Now for different toxins, there's different things you'll link on. And this linking is called conjugation. So for mercury, you link it onto glutathione. So that means you have to have enough glutathione and you have to have the activity of this linking enzyme called a transferase. And so if mercury is stuck onto a protein in the cell, it's going to transfer it from that protein onto the glutathione. So now you got a mercury glutathione conjugate in the cell. You got to get it out of the cell. And so you have these transporters that are transmembrane transporters. So you have a membrane around the cell. There's a little door across the membrane, and it uses energy, ATP, and it uses magnesium to push that mercury glutathione conjugate out of the cell. Okay. All right. So we need some energy. We need some magnesium. We need the glutathione, and we need the linking enzyme. And boom, you're out of the cell. Well, that's just the start of the whole journey. Now you're going to make your way into the blood. Now you're circulating. Now we have to filter you out of circulation and get you out of the body. So liver is the biggest pathway. And the liver, just like you have those transporters that go across the cell membrane, you have a transporter that goes from the blood into the liver. So that one's got to activate, pull that into the liver. And then you have another one that dumps it out of the liver. And where does it dump it into? It dumps it into the bile flow. So like we think back, we're like, bile, what's that? That's that green stuff that comes out of the liver, accumulates in the gallbladder and dumps into the intestines. And what does it do? It's an emulsifier for fats to help you digest fats. And there's a number of other enzymes in there. But it turns out that's a highway that every cell in the liver is producing bile and draining it down through these bile ducts. And it looks kind of like roots of a tree, like an upside down tree. And these roots go into all the cells. And the transporters that push the bile into the bile ducts push the toxins into the bile ducts too. So the bile flow is bringing the toxins out too. So this is bringing up some really important things that if you're not moving bile, you're not moving toxins. So then when those toxins get out of the bile down into the GI tract, you got to make sure you don't reabsorb them. So all the things we need the glutathione, we need the activity of the enzymes, we need the activity of the transporter, and we need the liver to be able to pull things in and dump into the bile, get into the GI tract, and then we need to capture the toxins in the GI tract. And if we do that, then the body's just always throwing things out. And eventually you poop those out and everything's good. But what blocks all that? Stress and inflammation. So real simple. So inflammation and stress are kind of the things that kill everybody. And so inflammation, what's driving inflammation? One of the things that really drives inflammation is endotoxin. Endotoxin it's actually parts of bacteria that get into circulation, and your body thinks that there's living bacteria, even though it's little parts of the bacteria, and it winds up inflammation. So how do you get that into circulation? You guys have probably heard of leaky gut. This is the big thing that goes into the pathology of ALS. I'm not an expert on ALS, but I've listened. David Steenblock knows a lot about ALS, and he's a friend of mine. He's lectured a lot. And so endotoxin gets in from leaky gut into circulation, winds up inflammation. It also gets in from periodontitis, from dental inflammation, and from UTIs. And so all these wind up inflammation, and they block this movement of bile and toxins out of your liver. Now, also, endotoxin goes up to the brain and it creates what's called neuroinflammation. And neuroinflammation is an inflammatory reaction that's a combination of your immune cells in the brain called microglia and your neurons and the glutamate receptors in the neurons. So there's what's called glutamate excitotoxicity is one of the things that winds up neurologic problems. And there's a number of toxins that do that, like mercury, glyphosate does that. The endotoxin works on that whole thing. And amyloid plaques work on that whole thing, and they make you fight or flight. So all that, in the autonomic nervous system, there's fight or flight and rest, digest, repair, regenerate, detoxify. So anything that winds you up into fight or flight, anything that's a stress, a chemical stressor or a perceptual emotional stressor does this, and hormones do this too. Estrogen blocks your liver and it winds up the glutamate receptors and makes you all stressed out. That's why estrogen dominance makes you irritable and anxious. So these are all the things that block it: stress, inflammation, estrogen dominance. So if we want to get detoxification open, we have to unlock the stressors. So we have to make a calmer neurological space. You might use GABA or CBD for that. CBD is also going to turn down all the inflammation. And then we have to turn up that whole train of detox. So at a cellular level, we might feed in glutathione, liposomal glutathione, or a precursor to glutathione is N-acetylcysteine. Some whey proteins have precursors to glutathione, so we have to build up that glutathione pool. And then we have to get these transporters and enzymes in liver working. So in our system, we have this thing, push catch liver detox. And it's a simple system at the core. It's got liver sauce, is stuff we call liver sauce. It's like A1 sauce for your liver. And that's got all these things to wind up what are called the phases of detox, which are the enzymes and the transporters. And it's got traditional bitter compounds to link the detoxification reactions to bioflow. That's why we used to take bitters like Swedish bitters or cocktail bitters. These were the cure-all in the early 1900s because they opened up bioflow. And in doing that, you just open up, a very locked system. So we have the phases of detox upregulated, the bioflow going. There's some things to calm down inflammatory reactions like histamine generation. And you take that all at once, all in one teaspoon. All of these things happen at once. And they're delivered in what's called a liposomal or nanoemulsion formula. This is, if we're delivering fat solubles, it's a nanoemulsion. If it's water solubles like glutathione, it's a liposome. But either of those are these tiny little nano bubbles, tiny. A nanometer is a millionth of a millimeter. And these things are 20 to 50 nanometers. And they're these tiny bubbles that when you take them in your mouth, they absorb right through the mucous membranes in your mouth and into the capillaries right under the mucous membranes. And they go into circulation. And then when you swallow it, they'll go through your stomach and upper GI lining. And all these compounds go rapidly into your blood. 20 minutes, 25 minutes, peaking in the blood, activating all of these things, moving the toxins, coupling it to bioflow. So it all goes down to the GI tract. And then a half hour after you take that, you're going to take something called ultra binder. It's this black powder. It's got charcoals and zeolites and special metal binders and mold binders. And you drink that down and it catches all those things that went into the GI tract. So first push the toxins down, then catch them. And so that two-part system is the base, and then anything else you want to add on. The glutathione, the CBD, cat's claw if you're trying to, resolve some of your immunological problems with chronic infections. So that's really the, how we lay the whole system out, and it works really brilliantly.
This is so intricate. I mean, it's so intricate. How long do you have to do this system that you just explained to us, which is so into great detail? So thank you for that.
Yeah, and it's simple yet super intricate. Like we had to line all these things all up at once, but we're going to make it pretty easy for you to do. And then your sort of minimum is a 2-week period, but that's just sort of to start cleaning things up.
Yeah.
You're trying to get at deeper toxin stores, you're going to be going for a couple of months.
Okay.
Do you
2 to 5 months for metals? It's not quick to get after the metals. Some of the organic, pesticides and herbicides, you can clear those out pretty quickly, but the metals you have to turn over from deeper stores and they take longer. And the deeper you start at low doses and you work up to very high doses where you're really purging everything out. And then, we sell a lot of this direct to consumer, and a lot goes right to the doctors. And then say you're dealing with lead. Then if you're dealing with lead, then we use a liposomal EDTA, and that one goes through the doctors. We don't do that one direct to consumer, kind of like the DMSA. You got to go to your naturopath and do that. But, some of the doctors will use our system as a base to get everything moving out. And then they'll overlay one of the chelators like DMSA or DMPS or IVs of EDTA, or they're using our liposomal EDTA. And some of the guys, like Mark Hyman and Todd Lepine that work with the Cleveland Clinic, they'll use this mixed approach of using both.
Do
Other
you
people
have
are just
any
focused.
recommendation for doing an IV or doing oral chelation?
Well, what we're doing is a kind of an oral chelation, but if you're going to overlay the use of DMSA or DMPS, I would start with our system. So get the liver pathways flowing, make sure that the inflammation is down, and start with that, and then put your DMSA dosing over top of that. Because the DMSA dosing kind of mobilizes some stuff, or shakes it around, and you got to make sure everything gets out. So you've opened up the drains, you're flushing everything with our system, and then you throw on top of it these stronger metal chelators. It was when I tried just doing the metal chelators without prepping the system at all is when I got sick.
I see. Do you recommend colonics?
I support colonics. I don't say that you have to do it with this system, but they definitely do help. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can support all the drainage of the system. Diuretics that are making you pee more. In fact, we have a kidney formula coming out soon. Laxatives to make you poop more. Colonics to clean that up. Saunas for sweating. Foot baths. People misunderstand the ionic foot baths. Those are actually an autonomic signal to your body to release things out of the tissue. So all these things that help tissues release or help drain, these really help a lot.
Would you say HRT for women is not a great idea, given that estrogen can block your liver? Because I'm in my 50s.
Quite the opposite.
What's that? So you need it?
100% the opposite. So let's go into that.
Because I'm in my 50s, not to give my young age away.
Oh, don't worry. I work with hormone replacement therapy all the time. I work with tons. I'm 52. All right. So all of the people around me are perimenopausal or menopausal. We have a whole hormone system coming out. But here's the deal. All right. So I said estrogen blocks the system. What is the antidote for estrogen, for having too much estrogen?
Progesterone.
Right. And what does progesterone do? Opens the freaking
Makes you
liver
sleep
right
better.
up. Yes. Yeah. And so what happens when you're estrogen dominant? You're irritable, you're a little bitchy, you're anxious, you can't sleep, you're locked up. How dare you? Man,
Dare
you can't say that. And what fixes it all is progesterone. It opens up the liver, it opens up the bile flow. So then up in the brain. So the glutamate receptors are what winds up the anxiousness. And the opposite of that is GABA. So it turns out progesterone metabolites from the liver go up and activate the GABA receptors. And that's what's chilling you out and making you sleep. And then, so there's this big trigger we're trying to turn up all the cellular detox. And it's called NRF2. We call it NRF2. And that is going to turn up all the genes to turn up all that chemistry for detoxification, right? But it's got a co-activator with it that needs to be engaged for it to work. And it's called the pregnane X receptor, or PXR. And the things that activate it are pregnenolone and progesterone. So you need that, but you need the hormone replacement to make everything work. In fact, in the beginning, when I started doing this, most of my early clients were perimenopausal and they had dental amalgams, and they're like, I was fine with this until now I'm 50 and now everything's a disaster, because all these signals for all that to work start going down. And so you need to bring those back up, and you need to power those up. So you just got to make sure that you get everything. And, you want a good amount of progesterone, you want a good amount of testosterone, because that's going to drive the system. And you just have to manage those all relative to your estrogen.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to say that for the past 6 years, I'm 70. For the
All
past 6 years, I get a testosterone shot every 2 weeks because
Yeah.
I run out every 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't that make you feel better?
Oh,
Oh,
Well, I was tested
Yeah,
low on
absolutely.
testosterone, and I have a cream to put it on my right here. And I'm so afraid to gain weight, so I don't use it.
well,
but testosterone, you gain lean weight and you lose fat. You gain muscle and lose fat. So actually, exercise
I'm doing
gets
it all wrong.
easier and you're more compelled to exercise, and you'll be like, tight and strong.
I'm doing it all wrong.
I run up and down the
Here
hill
we go.
now. It's
Yeah. See, I mean, look, he's got those tight, he's sort of a tight, wiry guy. If he wasn't on any of that, he'd be like thin and the arms would be hanging down. It really keeps it all on.
That's right. I have a hiking club. For
Yeah.
9 years, every Monday, we climb mountains.
Yeah. That's how you do it. So you make sure you got your progesterone on board and your testosterone on board, and you're going to be rocking it, Lisa.
But I want to know, what's the best energy medicine that you've come across? I know you've got something going on. Talk to me about it.
Oh, there's always something going on, See, look at this little thing I wear around my neck.
Oh, that's cool. Is that a
Yeah,
diamond in the middle?
It's a diamond in the middle. There's a different precious stone for each color. There's lab-grown quartz crystals wound with gold wire. It's pretty crazy, and all this laser engraving in there. So yeah, I've always been around energy techniques of various sorts, whether it was, my own training in meditation or Tai Chi and Qigong, Hindu stuff, or energy healing. So there's so many different systems of energy healing, and there's a lot of practitioner dependence on the success. So for diagnosis, there's something called ART, autonomic response testing, that was championed by Dietrich Klinghardt. He's a German, lives in America and Germany, back and forth, MD, PhD, very active in metals, in Lyme. He's done a lot of ALS, really radical stuff. And they'll do energy testing on you and some treatment on you that way. So I like ART for diagnosis. There's this other system called biophotonic healing, where they use mirrors made out of precious metals with polarized filters on them, for reflecting back your bioluminescence, biophotons, coming off of you being disordered in diseased tissues and reordering them with these filters is very cool. But that's more in Europe. There's a guy named Renzo Chelani who pioneered that. And he did also work with Klinghardt. It kind of comes down to, is it psycho-emotional healing? Is it repatterning? Is it, are you using electronics? There's so many different ones out there. You'll hold things and they'll sort of read your patterns, and, you're sort of seeing what's in there, and they repattern it with you. So it's really hard to say, what's the best system that's out there, but all of them. And if you're engaged in the process and you have a good operator, a good practitioner, you're going to come to the intuitive knowledge of what you're missing there. And that the energy medicine ends up being the missing link or the X factor in so many of the different treatments. And whether you've got to go back through psycho-emotional blocks, or if it's just, you've got too much EMF around you and your meridians are all screwed up. Sometimes it's just some acupuncture you need, but other times, it's old traumas that you got to go back and address. So it does become very tricky. Like I said, the ART, I think, is the best tool for kind of assessing where all of that is. You know, I got a good friend who's a healer. She brings her foot baths over, and that's like her main tool. And then she's
Yeah.
dowsing you, and she's doing all kinds of things. And then it's this magnet and this coil, and
Yeah.
you know, whatever she's working with at the time. And you just always unburden yourself of a lot of stuff, and you release a lot of stuff. But you know, she's not doing it the same way every time.
Well, I've done Reiki, I've done Qigong, I've done acupuncture, acupressure, and you know, they're all, I mean, I'm very open to all that. And I found, you know, pretty good effects from it. So I want to understand too, how you see toxins playing a role in mental health. Because, you know, we have a lot of mental health issues, I think, now. And I know there's a lot of things that play a role in that. But specifically,
No, but toxins are really a real big deal. You know, so when we were talking about neuroinflammation and we we're talking about glutamate receptor excess, and when that happens, you get excess of glutamate, which is stimulatory, and it's putting you into sort of fear-based fight or flight type of thing. A number of the toxins go and activate that. In fact, the biggest symptom for mercury toxicity is anxiety. Anxiety and then fatigue. So anxiety is the brain receptor. The fatigue is the depletion of your mitochondrial reserves, plus thyroid and adrenal effects that all come along with mercury.
And this has become mercury. This is because of mercury and lead, is what you're saying creates anxiety?
Well, a number of toxins act that same way.
Okay.
Mold toxins do. Mercury, cadmium, and arsenic do. Lead is a little bit different. So lead doesn't make you excitable. Lead makes you dull, as McFinn experienced. It makes you just sort of duh until you're violent. You know, you're sort of thuggish and then violent. Mercury makes you a little like scattered and weird. And so they're a little bit different there, but they're disturbing your neurotransmitter balance. All of them are. And they're, you know, if you keep on this one side all the time, you know, like real jacked up, and then you swing into depression. And so you tend to go from anxiety to depression to anxiety to depression. It's kind of like a manic depressive type of cycle.
Yeah.
So they're always creating that. And when they create that, remember that fight or flight thing. Fight or flight keeps you away from healing.
Mm-hmm.
So a toxin that locks you up like this prevents you from getting rid of it, because the detox is all in the parasympathetic rest, digest, repair, regenerate, detoxify. Realize that those are ways that you prioritize things in your body. When you're in fight or flight, you're prioritizing fighting or fleeing. You're bringing energy into those processes, and you're bringing energy away from the restorative processes. So you're chronically putting yourself over there. So it like gets an edge in, and it keeps you from healing yourself. And then as that edge wears on you, you know, it's like chronic stress. And then your stability starts going down. And these things damage your mitochondria, right? And so when your mitochondria are damaged, so the toxins all damage mitochondria. Now, in the lower part of your body, when you have mitochondrial damage, you might end up gaining a lot of weight, you know, and obesity has this kind of mitochondrial dysfunction with it. And you just go into these downward spirals where you're just always accumulating calories on your frame and not burning them. In the brain, mitochondrial dysfunction leads into depression instead of obesity. And so toxins can lock you into that. And doing these detoxification protocols, the way I talk about them, the beauty is you're getting rid of the toxins that are trying to lock you into these negative cycles, but you're also upregulating all of the regenerative chemistry. And a lot of this is anti-aging chemistry. And so there's the NRF2, and then AMPK comes with it. And that's what you turn on when you're doing fasting, and it's turning on the ability to burn up all the stored calories and be very efficient with your energy. And then a higher level of that are called sirtuins, and that's sort of codifying in this high metabolism way of being. And and at the same time getting rid of what are called senescent cells. Senescent cells are cells that are getting old. They go into this zombie-like activity, and they're releasing inflammation. They're releasing inflammatory cytokines all
Well,
around
and
them.
inflammation goes down if you fast. Is that correct? I heard that.
Yes. Yes. And because of these triggers that you're activating, and actually during detoxification with the compounds that we use, we're activating the same pathways that you activate while you're fasting. In fact, if you do both, if you're detoxifying and fasting, at least intermittent fasting, the whole process works that much better. Eating less actually brings your metabolism up more. So intermittent fasting to be really good to go along with detoxification. And intermittent fasting, for those who don't know, is basically skipping a meal or skipping 2 meals. So the most common way is that you fast overnight after your dinner and you skip breakfast and you don't eat until lunch. Now, there are things that you can take. You could take your supplements. Even fats don't break your fast. And so then people will do things like bulletproof coffee. But carbs and protein do break the fast. So what else do we want to encourage with this to keep our mitochondria working strong and our metabolism high? There's a compound called NAD, or nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. You'll see NAD+. And this is something that your cells make, but it goes down with time. And it is taking the electrons away from the carbs and the fats that you're burning up for fuel and brings them into what's called the electron transport chain, which is where you make ATP, or cellular energy. So the NAD is shuttling all this in, but then NAD is also responsible for a lot of these metabolic programs I was talking about, like activating sirtuins. So sirtuins are these proteins that help you shed weight, turn down inflammation, block things like NF-κB, which is an inflammatory molecule. So they lower inflammation, they increase metabolism, and they're really longevity genes. They're keeping you living long time. That's why you work out a lot, probably eat well, and that's keeping you healthy at 70 years old. So NAD is one of these things that we want to bring up, and you can use precursors to it. The most simple of which is niacin, or vitamin B3. But the higher level ones, especially if you're older, there's something called NR, or nicotinamide riboside, and NMN, or nicotinamide mononucleotide. So in the Quicksilver line, we have NAD gold and NAD platinum are liposomes of this NMN, direct precursor to NAD. And especially if you do the NAD platinum, it comes with some B vitamins that balance the activity and the metabolism of the NAD. And when you have adequate levels, your metabolism is good, you lose weight, you have clean thinking, a lot of clarity to the brain, you have better sleep cycles, because the sleep cycles are ruled by clock genes, which are ruled by sirtuins. So NAD does all these different things, and it gets your body really all on the same page to have a longevity and a good overall health and energy.
Does it contain the Bs, like the B3, or is that separate?
B3 has to go through a bunch of different steps to become NAD. And the last step it goes through is as NMN, or nicotinamide mononucleotide. So for the high level NAD supplements, you just go all the way to the NMN, because as you get older and as inflammation builds up and different chronic things build up, your ability to turn B3 all the way to NAD gets weaker and weaker. And so we use these higher order precursors, the NR, the NMN. Now, when you're driving NAD with that, you need to balance it with methylating B vitamins. And this means methyl B12, it means having adequate B2, adequate folate, and a little B6. And so in our NAD platinum product, we have those all blended together. Or in our NAD gold, you blend it with something called methyl charge. So you get the B vitamins, the methylating B vitamins and the NAD precursor in 2 separate bottles, and you balance them yourself, or an NAD platinum. It all comes together. And there's a couple sirtuin activating compounds with that, resveratrol and quercetin.
If you have a vegan diet, does that, would you suggest a certain product that you put out? Because I'm a
B12 for sure, either our methyl B complex or the liposomal methyl B12. So B12 is the hardest thing to get into your diet when you're a vegan.
I get a B12 shot every 30 days.
I need one. I need
so the liposome will do that for you.
Okay.
And so you can either every 30 days get your shot, or every day do a little, or a couple times a week do a couple sprays of the B12. So either just our straight liposomal B12 or the methyl B complex. That'll bring all the different Bs together.
Do you find spirituality to be medicine?
Absolutely. Whenever, you look at the almost every mystical or spiritual path is going to involve some sort of contemplation, peacefulness. Some of them are more yoga-like, where you'll do breathing exercises or movements. Any of those, settling down the mind. The mind is the biggest trap that keeps you from healing. And it's just like little thoughts banging around, and usually they're negative and they're keeping you out of your healing space. So all of the quiet things where you look to a higher, you're looking to be infused by a higher spiritual power, whether it's just you and and you just don't recognize your godhood yet, or you're reflecting out to have somebody else come in, you're looking to Christ or Buddha or whoever. You're opening up this space, you're creating a quietude. The quietude and the peace is allowing you into those realms of healing. But then when you're looking to this higher energy, you're actually releasing yourself and allowing yourself to go up into a less constrained, more perfect world. And that's just allowing you to go into the healing. And sometimes we don't believe in ourselves enough to let ourselves do that, but we believe in this savior figure, and you'll let the savior figure do it for you. And you're like, well, through Christ, then I'm good enough to do this. But no matter what it is, you're letting yourself rise up to this higher level and this more pure level, and you're letting go of those limitations and those little things that are all over you, holding you down. And emerge into a better space.
Yeah, people need to get a new vinyl to play in their mind.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the old one of my limitations and my angers and my thises and that's, they all stop you from healing. Yeah. And then when you're like, oh, now I'm going to play the purity record and we're all white light, beauty and angels and stuff. And it's like, whoop. And then the body can be like, yeah, we are that.
I find it interesting that people are living longer than ever now. The average lifespan of men, used to be 30 some odd years. And now, men who still live shorter than women overall by statistics are living longer. We're all living longer, yet our quality of life, the anxiety, the depression, the mental health that's going on in our country.
All the polypharmacy, all the things we're taking, this to solve that, and this to
the
solve
opioid
that.
crises, all of that. It's so sad and it's so heartbreaking that
we're talking about health span versus lifespan. So the lifespan is extended, and now it's, call it 80 years, but the health span, how long are you healthy? That's dying off in the 50s. And you want to be, like McFinn here in the 70s, still cranking along and feeling great.
Without the anxiety and depression that people are having. Yeah, they're living longer, but how's that quality, and why is it so much harder now? So,
and the anxiety, the body and the mind are decrepit together, and they become strong together. And so, it's like mitochondrial dysfunction and energy dysfunctions in the body, making it old and tired and heavy, and in the mind, making it depressed and anxious.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's all connected.
So my cat came to the door and woke me up at 4 o'clock this morning because it was raining and it wanted to come in. So I get out of bed, I let my wife's cat come in, and then I go lay back down in bed, and I'm almost about to put a frown on my face and go, but instead, consciously, I went, hey, let's try something. Put a smile on your face and see how you feel about this whole thing. I put that smile on my face, everything went away. It was like, everything's okay.
Yeah. Consciously shifting.
Yes.
And a number of conscious decisions, changing the internal automatic landscape that always wants to go to frown or always wants to go, oh, I'm a victim. You're consciously, with gratitude and things like that, shifting it up to a positive state.
Doc, it is really a pleasure to meet somebody who is out of the box, who is open and friendly, who has time to share your wisdom, because it took you all these years to put together what you have now. And people look at you and they just see a person. Well, actually, I look at you and I see history and I see the future. And I just pray for your health so that you can keep doing the things that you're doing for all of us.
Great to meet you guys. All right.
Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us in our journey of exploration and digging deep into the souls of those affected by ALS and those working tirelessly to help put an end to this devastating disease. Your stories and work matter so much to us and to so many. Keep sharing and continuing to help further the research in ALS so we don't have to see another person suffer. Are you a researcher, neurologist, pharma, or biotech company working in the ALS space? If so, we would love to hear from you. For more information, please visit everythingals.org, or you can contact us at info@everythingals.org. Thank you.